Welcome friends. In this series called The Interview, every week we bring to you one personality, one persona and of course one issue. This time we are bringing to you someone who's an ambassador, a diplomat, but more importantly he belongs or represents a country with which India has a very special relationship. It's Israel. India and Israel marked 30 years, 3 decades of establishing their diplomatic relationship. And I'm welcoming Ambassador Naor Gilon. Very welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Ambassador, but the question is, India and Israel have been around for 75 years in its modern history, since independence for India and Israel having been established by David Ben-Gurion in 1948. Why 30 years and not 75 years?
Well, it's a very good question. Let me start a little bit earlier in history. I think that about 2,500 years ago, the first Jews came to India. And what is very unique about the Jews in India, that unlike in Europe and other continents, the Jews here lived a wonderful life, equal life like everyone else. Anti-Semitism is not even a known word here. No one knows what it is, which is a big problem in the Western world today. And this was the first bridge between our countries. The second bridge between our countries was probably First World War, when Indian soldiers, as part of the Anglo-Indian army, fought the Ottomans, the Turks, and released really or conquered what is today the State of Israel. A few 30 years later became the State of Israel. Now, India was established a few months before Israel. India voted in the beginning in 1947, Resolution 181 of the UN, which decided to create 2 states. India voted against. The countries the Arab countries voted against. Most of the world voted in favor, and it was passed. So the start was a little bit slow.
Shaky.
I must say that our first Prime Minister Ben-Gurion saw in Gandhi and the Indian freedom movement as a sister movement. Although the principles were different and everything, but it was the first time, that's the same time. And both of us were under British, we were under mandate, not part of the empire. And if you go to his bedroom where he decided to retire in Sde Boker, you will see the picture of Gandhi on the wall.
And Ben-Gurion's residence?
Ben-Gurion's residence in Sde Boker, there is a picture of Gandhi. He used to do yoga. So he was very close, and it's said that after we declared the State of Israel in 1948, there were 2 countries in the beginning, US and Russia, that acknowledged Israel. And he's quoted as saying that once India will acknowledge, it will close the full circle. The issue is that it took India another year and a half or so, but in 1950, India acknowledged Israel. In 1953, we opened no embassies at the time, no full diplomatic relations. We opened our consulate in Bombay of the time. No reciprocity. India did not do the same. And the big change happened in 1992, 31 years ago.
But before we go to 1992, I'll come to that. 1950, when India recognized Israel and you set up the consulate there, I believe the then Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, said that we would have wanted to do it earlier, but then our Arab policy does not allow us. And that sort of set the template for next few decades.
Yes.
You think so? That has had a shadow on the India-Israel relationship till 1992?
Yeah, and look, India was one of the leaders of a non-aligned movement during the Cold War. And the non-aligned movement was in general hostile towards Israel. The Arab countries were closer to that, and part of it, some of them. So in this sense, I think that set the tone. That was the tone. The tone was not our consulate in Mumbai, or Bombay, I should say, because at the time,
yes,
was very much limited also in what they could do. It's not that they treated it, it's an Israeli embassy but located in Bombay. No, it was limited. They could do only local culture, stuff like that, economy. So things were totally different. And then came 92, and 2 phenomena led to the establishment of full diplomatic relations. It was a period in which quite a few countries, China a few weeks before India, also established diplomatic relations with Israel. it was one element that was very historically is the 89 collapse of the Soviet Union.
Right.
So we became into a unipolar world.
Right.
And following also the first Iraq war, there was the Madrid conference, the first peace conference between Israel and the Arab world.
Right.
And this led to the change. And, you know, from 92, our relations started growing slowly. There were visits in the early 2000s of Israel Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and President Ezra Weizmann. And we were cooperating, by the way, on defense, very strongly on defense.
In all these years?
Yeah, most of the years. Cargill support
Even
of
in the before 1992?
I think that there was already some cooperation. It, of course, with the years, it grew stronger and stronger. And Cargill is very much known, I think, to people, the fact that Israel was supplying and assisting. And one element was the defense, the other element was agriculture. A lot of Israeli agriculture technology was here, drip irrigation, all that.
Right.
So these were the two elements. And then I think the big change in our relations started in 2015 when the Indian president went to Israel for the first time. And then 2017, Prime Minister Modi went to Israel. And we upgraded our relations to strategic partnership. And a few months later, 2018, Prime Minister Netanyahu came here. And I think from that time on, strategic partnership is not only by name, it's also by action and by nature. So if you look at our relations, they are really today filling all fields. So there are very few limitations on our relations today, if at all.
But what makes you say so? Like, what factors contribute to the India-Israel partnership being so wholesome? Is it because the governments align strategically, or is it because there is a people-to-people connect? Because you need often that in these opinion polls, the opinion about Israel within the Indian population is much more favorable vis-a-vis how Israel is seen, for example, even in the United States.
There is no doubt about it. I've served, I think, in 7 different diplomatic postings, twice in the US, a few times in Europe, my 3rd time ambassador. I saw friendship to Israel in different places, in the pockets of friendship to Israel, but such wide support and love to admiration towards Israel as I see here, I never met in the world, I must say that. It also goes the other way around, by the way. We grew up, first of all, when we were one channel TV in Israel, when I was a teenager, 40 years ago. Every Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock, there were either Arab movie, usually Egyptian, but not only, or Indian movie. So, and all the country was watching. We had only one channel, and that was the most popular viewing time of the time. So we grew up on a lot of Bollywood kind of films, and so it was known. And then there is the known phenomena here that Israelis after military service, they choose to come to India, but it's what I call a full immersion visit. So they don't come 5-star hotels.
Yeah.
They go backpackers. They, you know, they want to live. They go to Vipassana and they go to yoga classes and they go to, you know, they want to be part, I think, and parcel of the culture, to live like Indians, eat Indian food, live with Indians, live the Indian way. And, you know, these are already for tens of years, 30, 40 years, Israelis have been doing it. Now it's the 2nd generation. I see the parents here coming and bringing their teenager children to show them their experience from India when they were after military service. So the people to people is very strong. I think also before we had the jump in the relations. So, you know, here the people went before the politicians. The politicians came and really, you know, straightened the line or together with the people. So here we have a combination of very strong people-to-people relations with a very strong government, G2G, government-to-government relations. You know, we are very, very transparent with each other. There is hardly anything, you know, in defense there are many sensitive sides. There is hardly anything that Israel would not share with India today. And India is enjoying a lot of Israeli technology and know-how because we trust India. It's a question of trust. You know, here, what your biggest fear in defense is that your capabilities will be exposed to the enemy. And I think that you have to trust the people you work with when you give them your technology and you share, because you share your capabilities, but also your weaknesses and everything. If you now use an Israeli system, you understand also where the blind spots of the system and everything.
What it can do and also what it cannot.
Exactly. And you don't do it with countries you don't really share confidence with.
So is that, of course, that's a contributing factor. But you mentioned that things really changed post-2015. Does it go back to the 2014 Gaza crisis and the manner in which India voted the United Nations? Typically, the pattern was that because of the historic legacy of Pandit Nehru, India's position would be a little soft on Palestine. But in 2014, and subsequently we have seen it's more nuanced, more balanced. So for example, if India condemns, it condemns both the sides and asks both the sides to pull back and restrain and not indulge in violence. You think that things have changed, particularly post-2014 with the present government and the Prime Minister and the chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Netanyahu, for example?
Yes, I think that the philosophy that Jay Shankar is speaking about a lot, and he's not the only one, the dehyphenation was the big change in the game. So for many years, Palestinian issue held hostage all our relations, with some countries. And it was a problem because they said, until you don't solve the Palestinian issue, don't go forward, we cannot have full the relations, etc., etc. So there was always a connection. I think that the dehyphenation said, we are the Indian foreign ministry, external affairs, or we are the Indian government, and we have to take care of the Indian people. Our main concern are the well-being of the Indian people. So we will work with Israel in order to promote our people's interests, and we will work. The Palestinian issue is there, it's not disappearing. By the way, I think that the Abraham Accords that came later on, the same UAE and the other, Bahrain, Morocco, applied the same logic. They said, we have, for years, they have been supporting the Palestinians financially, politically, all the money was put on the Palestinian side. It didn't reach any place. There was no advancement, also because of, I think, that on the Palestinian side, there is a problem of leadership and readiness to lead the way. So, there is a leadership, but I'm not sure that it's ready to lead the people towards peace yet, towards a solution. And anyhow, they understood that, you cannot wait until there will be a solution, until the sides are ready to go to finalize. So it's not that they are ignoring the Palestinian issue, but now they are taking care, putting their people first. And I think this is the movement that we can see now. And that's why with the UAE, with Morocco, with Bahrain, we have very good relations today. And again, the Palestinian issue is still there, and from time to time they do condemn us also on the Palestinian issue. From time to time they would condemn also the Palestinians when they do something wrong in their eyes. But our bilateral relations, and this is what India led the way, are the interest of our peoples are the main issues. And that's why I2U2 was born also. So I think it's a very good development.
You mentioned Abraham Accords. Now, of course, we're talking about Abraham Accords 2.0, but so sort of the relationship has been coterminous with what's been happening in the Middle East in terms of the peace process culminating with the Abraham Accords and now, of course, I2U2. You think this would not have been possible but for the Abraham Accords?
I think it's a paradigm change. So, ability to work with Israel, I think that, by the way, the fear of Iran had a lot to do with it. Because Israel was perceived as the country that is standing up against Iran in its attempts to become nuclear and destabilizing the Middle East, especially we were against, especially when they were destabilizing us, or not us, Israel, it's hard, but our surroundings, in Syria, in Lebanon, all of that. And I think that he was much appreciated in the region, and their fear of Iran pushed them in a way also towards Israel, but also other elements. And I think all of it enabled eventually for a change of paradigm, I think, in the Middle East. It's not the same Middle East we saw 4 or 5 years ago.
All right. So, and that takes me to the next aspect of India-Israel relationship. You mentioned defense, of course, and connected with that is the security partnership and the coming together of two nations when it comes to challenges both the societies and the nations and their states face, which is terrorism, for example. There is this 26/11 incident, terror attack on Mumbai, and both nations suffered together. You think in that backdrop, post that, there is coming together of the two governments and the people to make sure that incidents like that do not happen again?
No doubt. I think that challenges, fears of people are pushing them to work together. And I think that their concern, mutual concern of terrorism, especially when in Mumbai they also went after Jewish community, Israelis, of course, in the Chabad house. So I think that our cooperation is also based a lot on counterterrorism. We are sharing a lot of information and a lot of best practices and technologies that are helping each other to combat terrorism, because terrorism, regardless of its so-called reason or excuse or explanation why they are doing terrorism, is unacceptable and shouldn't be acceptable. And India and Israel, by the way, are also in the UN and other bodies are cooperating in counterterrorism, supporting each other, supporting ideas, bringing together. India hosted here events on counterterrorism when it was president of the Security Council, and we supported and we brought experts, and so we work together, and the cooperation is really, really good also on counterterrorism and other concerns. This is one of the main, I think, basis of our cooperation and our friendship.
All right, and since you mentioned technology, Israel is known for its technological innovation. What all is happening on that front in terms of making Israeli technology available in areas where it can speed up India's march to progress and India's development?
Yeah, Israel was named in a book, the Startup Nation, and it's not far from reality. Israel is a very small country. We have to remember the difference of capacity between a country which is less than 10 million people and a huge country like India is huge. The difference is huge. And we are world leaders in many fields of innovation. India has its own strength in innovation. We are trying to work beyond the defense, where we are already working, and you know, the new Indian carrier that was launched is protected by missiles that are co-production and co-development of India and Israel together. So just as one example. And there are many more examples of such. But we are taking it also to the civilian side. We are trying to connect the ecosystems of India and Israel. India, beyond having technology, has a great manufacturing capacity and upscaling capability because of the size of the market and the friendships with other countries. We can work together here, develop here, manufacture here, and export it to India and to other countries. So sell it to India and export to other countries. So there are many, many potentials. We are trying all the time to bring the ecosystems together. It's one of the biggest efforts we are doing. We have I4F, a joint fund that is doing part of it on the industrial side. It's an ongoing thing. It's not easy because everyone is concentrated in its own efforts, and you know, startups are struggling for oxygen. Money is oxygen for them. So time is an element, ability to spend money going abroad. So all of that, but we are trying to encourage it all the time. Now when we are expecting soon visits of our Ministry of Economy and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, both of them will bring a delegation of businesses, mainly in the innovation sphere.
Right.
So this is the idea, to have them meet Indian counterparts and have things coming out, good things coming out of it.
All right, so as a journalist, when I've been covering states, you know, one interesting aspect I found was many of these legislators from respective states and many farmers from the society at large, I know at least for 2 decades, if not more, have been traveling to Israel to learn the cutting edge in agriculture that's practiced in Israel. So you think over the last few years, a lot of Israeli technology has found acceptance and taken roots in India?
Yes, of course. A lot of
and if you have numbers, like how many people have gone there and learned agriculture, for example?
We have today in India, government to government, non-profit, we have 30 centers of excellence in agriculture, I think spread over 16 states in India. We have another 14 centers in the making, so by the end of the year we will reach closer to 40 centers. In those centers, about 2 million farmers, probably that's the estimate, went through. And we're able to acquire the knowledge of, on the one side, they give them the basic technology for the small farmer, how to increase the yield significantly. I've been to Haryana, to one of the centers in horticulture, where they told me they don't see an Israeli there because the Israelis come and do the capacity building. So we teach the Indian teachers, and we come from time to time to recalibrate every 3-4 months, hopefully, when there is no COVID, we come to recalibrate to see that things are going well there. And they told us that that the yield for the farmer, average farmer, is 4 times what he did before, because they are giving him better seeds. It's semi-controlled with polyethylene, drip irrigation, better fertilizers, everything is done more precisely. And they
is it happening at a mass scale?
Yeah, it's quite a relatively mass scale. Again, 2 million people is, even for India, is a nice number. Israel, as a country of 10 million, could never do it itself. It's done by Indians for Indians. We are just a facilitator here. I must say that. So we have these centers. They are working very well, and we have also in bees, in mangoes, in fruits, horticulture, in different fields. And some are going to Israel. Mainly, we send the teachers to Israel.
Right.
So the capacity building is also sent in. And every year, I think around of tens to 100 people would go to Israel for courses on the spot. We also have a lot of activity. We have the only water attaché in the world in Delhi, in our embassy, and they are doing, it's also part of the agreements between the prime ministers, and there was an agreement in the Bundelkhand in UP to do a project together of utilizing the water and agriculture in the state. We do the planning. The execution will be done by Indian partners. So.
Since you mentioned water project, the most famous picture perhaps of the two prime ministers when Prime Minister Modi visited Israel in 2017 was, I believe, they were at the beach and they had that water which was purified.
Yes.
India is obviously a water-stressed nation, and things per capita availability is going to go down as we move forward. Is there some long-term partnership going in terms of making sure that on this front, on the water availability front, we have some durable solutions which are replicated at a mass scale?
So I would start by saying a word about Israel. Israel suffers a lot from the lack of water. We suffered a lot from the lack of water. Water was a commodity. In the beginning, we used to, when we were in the 50s, early 50s, a young country, we used to export the oranges. Jaffa oranges were known around the world, the trademark. And we understood that we don't have enough water to export oranges because we are really exporting our waters. And Israelis are paying the price of water is the stimulation to develop water resources and treatment. So we reuse 90% of our waters for agriculture. And the next country after us is Spain, I think, with under 30%. So we really reuse. We made desalinization into a very big scale endeavor. The biggest, I think, facility of desalinization in India is Israeli, in Chennai. So, you know, we are doing a lot of things in order to conserve, to treat water, and to reuse. And now there is no problem. We are selling now to Jordan, for example, neighboring countries suffering from drought, permanent drought. We are selling them a lot of water. And we are, you know, it's not an issue anymore. And we are working here. The idea with India is, again, on technology and planning.
Right.
Because the execution, Indian companies can do better than anyone.
My next question, connected with technology, there's another aspect, the security aspect. And then there has been a political controversy around use of some software or Israeli technology in India for surveillance, for example. So without getting into the domestic politics component, the fact of the matter is that there was this issue, and then it was connected with Israeli company or a Israeli software. Has your position, essentially what's your position on that?
You know, we spoke about counterterrorism before. These softwares were done where Israel is a world leader in cyber protection and cyber capabilities. And these softwares were developed in order to confront terrorism and organized crime. This is the idea behind it. The terrorists, they have means, and the only way to try and disrupt them is using these capabilities, or the main way. And we put export controls, very strict export controls, We sell only to governments, and again, it's a private company in Israel developed it, not governmental. But even though it's a private company, we put very strict export control. It's not shooting weapon, but it's treated like such. So only to governments, not to all governments. And the precondition is how to use it. There are preconditions. So all of that we put very strictly. But these softwares are needed. The bad guys have the access to the data. You want to give the governments the same capability in order not to be surprised and not have surprise terror attacks or organized crime that is disrupting all our lives. This is the idea there.
There are mechanisms in place so that it cannot be used in a manner which it is not intended.
There are mechanisms, and the more strongly there are, if you take dependable partners and you have agreements how to be used, this is how it's regulated.
All right, my last two questions. The penalty with one, the issue of trade. Close observers of India-Israel relationship would say that it's still not up to its full potential. For example, the free trade agreement. India is renegotiating with many countries. What's the position or situation insofar as the India-Israel FTA is concerned, for example, and the overall trade volume, despite all the partnership that exists on defense and agriculture?
I would go back to 1992 when we established our diplomatic relations. Our trade was around $200 million. Our trade today, according to the Indian numbers of 2022, before COVID, were around $5 billion a year, but now they passed the $10 billion a year and even more, because services are not included, which is at least $1 billion between us, and defense is not included. So our trade is growing significantly. As for the FTA, it's a little bit slow, so for many years we are talking about FTA, hard to advance. I think part of it is the difference of sizes between our economies.
Since we're talking about trade, there is a Haifa Chowk, by the way, in New Delhi now,
Yes.
and then there is the Haifa port. So it's connection between trade and strategic partnership that's there. What's the situation on that front now? Does it stay as strong as it was post the Hindenburg Adani story?
First of all, I would say that the fact that Israel granted 50 years concession to an Indian company is a strong sign of confidence and intimacy between the countries, because Israel is a de facto island. If you look at it, we have two neighbors in situation of war and two neighbors in situation of peace, and the big sea between us towards Europe and the West where we trade. And so we are acting like an island country. And we have in the Mediterranean two ports. One of them now is in Indian hands. So you have to understand how strategic this is for us to give it. As for Adani, I was asked about it, and I said, look, Adani won the tender. He paid upfront the whole money together with his Israeli partner. They paid $1.2 billion. I believe that Adani has an interest and the capability to make this port flourish. That's what we expect from him. This is the bread and butter, the basic thing that Adani did in the first years. And I do hope that and I do believe that this port is going to be a successful port. It needs the push because in the last few years it was a little bit run down because they knew they're going to take it out to a tender. So automatically when you start taking your foot off the gas pedal. But I think that now with Adani, with his capabilities, it will flourish and it will be a success.
All right, since we have somehow come back to security, and that's an important aspect, my last question to you. The perpetrators of 26/11 terror attack still roaming free. Can Israel and India do something together about it? India is doing about it. Can Israel and India do something about it?
I think that Israel, it's a problem of India because the attack was on Indian soil, although, of course, Israeli couple was murdered there, and the son was just here, spoke to in the conference, counterterrorism conference that India organized in Mumbai. Of course, it's an Indian issue, but as I said, on counterterrorism, we are working together. We are 100% supporting you. We believe, our strong belief is that you have to pursue and catch and take care of the people who use terror. You cannot accept terror. You cannot live with terror. You have to fight terror until the end. and we are 100% behind India in this effort to find and bring these people to justice.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Naor Gilon, for speaking to Republic TV.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.